Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rahakwadash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and salutations to the Akim who are tuning into these videos. In this video, I wanted to speak about the parable of the sower and how not all of Israel is going to endure until the end. As you can see in the precept that I'm going to start up with is in Matthew 22 and 14. For many are called, but few are chosen. Now, this word is being spoken all throughout the four corners of the earth, and it's accomplishing what it was sent to do. But not only is it waking up people, it's also sealing them for either salvation or condemnation, especially if a person is in this ministry and they take their hand off the plow. Those people aren't fit for the kingdom of heaven. So that's a notion that we have to understand. So when we're out there on the highways and hedges, not only are we fishing for the elect, but we're fishing for people who may not endure. And nonetheless, the Spirit is going to do the job for us. Like you can go into the parable of the sower, that the person came and put tares everywhere. Our job is to harvest, not to reap. And the rest of the tares, those are going to get burnt by someone else, which it goes into that parable when Yahweh Shai, he was speaking these things because it wasn't given to everybody, but he was telling the disciples at the time what was the understanding of that. So this precept right here is in Romans 11 and 7. What then? Israel hath not obtained that which he seeketh for, but the election hath obtained it, and the rest were blinded. And so we're not really worried about if a person doesn't get it. We're not worried if a person doesn't want to subscribe to our videos or stick around and listen to our videos, or when we're out there on the highways and hedges. We know and understand that the Lord is dealing with 144,000 elect men who are going to stand still before his name, no matter what trials and tribulations they're going to face. And the Lord will test you. The testing process is the sifting process. If you fail the tests and if you can't endure, well, then you are not fit for the kingdom. You are basically going to be blinded. I'm going to continue on. Romans 11 and 8, it says, according as it is written, the Most High Yahweh hath given them the spirit of slumber, eyes that they should not see, and ears that they should not hear, unto this day. And just to emphasize the importance of this word, because when Yahweh Shai spoke, we're speaking, and when we're iterating his gospel and good news, we're being baptized, cleansed, and born again. And so you shouldn't really disregard this grace period that you have. And that's why when these 2/3 or anybody who doesn't want to endure with us, they don't adhere to what the message is really about. It's about enduring. It's about patience, which means to suffer. And so those people are basically going to be cast out if they don't endure. Because as it says in 2 Ezra 9, a lot of these people, the majority of the 2/3, and even those who are basically crept in unaware, they are the 2/3. They basically see this grace period. They despise it and reject it because they don't really understand it. But the elect do. They've obtained this understanding. They know that this is what life is about. Really to put your life on the line for Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai for this ministry. And then everything else will be added unto you. Because the elect right now are seeking the kingdom of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. That's why we're out there on the highways and hedges. That's why we study to show ourselves approved. That's why we are brotherly to one another, because we hold strong the tenets of the scriptures and of what Yahweh Shai was commanding us. Let me get some other precepts, because this goes into the blinding of these people. And you can read that account in 1 Kings, I believe the chapter was 22, when the angels were actually going out with a lying spirit. So you have to understand that that's a thing that actually takes place. We're not like these buggy, wacky-tacky Christians who want 1 million people to come to our congregation, because you could just tell that a person that's doing that, even amongst the Israelite groups like IUIC, just to name a few, they're really just a number thing because they want money. They're in this for filthy lucre's sake, as opposed to the elect. And that's what you see mainly here at Great Millstone. We're only worried about the elect and seeking our own salvation with fear and trembling. No one else is going to save you in the sense of like doing your job. You yourself have to have the faith and works to prove in these last days. Everybody's going to have to work on this field and get that pretty penny. It was just spoken about in the scriptures. But let me read this in Ezekiel 12:2. It says, Son of man, thou dwellest in the midst of a rebellious house. And coming into this ministry and then disregarding it, just quitting, not showing up. Because we've seen a few of those people. Like you see the brothers to our left and our right are being sealed in the sense of being the hopeful elect. We're also seeing people who we once thought were brothers being sealed to be for condemnation, the 2/3, because they're rebellious. They just don't understand that we have to follow line, order. That's something that like the so-called Black, Latinos, Native American communities, the 2/3, they don't hold those tenets. Integrity. These are things that aren't spoken about in their ghettos or whatever. But they're pretty much a rebellious nation, because all we really need to do is the simplicity of Yahushai. It's just to go out there on the highways and hedges, teach, and teach yourself. Edify, study, be in the scriptures, do these videos. But if you're not doing those things, basically you have a rebellious spirit, just like the house of Saul. And see, we're basically a representative of the house of David. So from Ezekiel 12:2 again, it says, Son of man, thou dwellest in the midst of a rebellious house, which have eyes to see and see not. They have ears to hear and hear not, for they are a rebellious house. And watching other brothers like the elder brother Yeshawamba, who was recently going into his comment section, all these other bug outs always want to ask us the most craziest questions that don't pertain to salvation. They're basically rebellious. They see just a bunch of men. They don't understand that we're sent by the Spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. They're just into carnal things. That's just how far their rebellious minds goes. They don't understand that this is literally the grace period that's given to you. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, because we've heard it all already. The types of scoffs and things that they try to say to us, like the doctrine of camps is wrong. Paul's teachings are wrong. John the Baptist wasn't in the truth. The list goes on, and it's going to keep going on until Yahushua returns, because we're literally we're prophesying against a rebellious house. But as you can see, though, you still see the brothers to our left and our right, from the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And the only way that we're being brought together and being brotherly to each other is through the Spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. So nothing is going to stop Yahushai's ministry from being pushed out. Let me get some other precepts. This is in Isaiah 29:10. For the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai hath poured out upon you the spirit of deep sleep, and hath closed your eyes. The prophets and your rulers, the seers, hath he covered. And so that's the thing, is the Heavenly Father basically is discerning you when you come across this truth, whether you're really about this thing or not. Let me get that real quick in Ezekiel 9. Because as we're out there on the highways and hedges, a lot of things that's happening in Ezekiel is taking place. We got the signs, and we're telling our people to rise up out of sleep, and they're getting the spirit. They're like from the valley of dry bones, they're getting their sinews back, but not everybody is going to have the spirit. Some of them are going to get up and fist bump us when they walk by. They say, Shalom, well, I'm an Israelite, or whatever. But ultimately, this thing is about taking hold of this truth and actually putting forth your life on the line. That's what is expected. And it's a little thing, really. Like the fact that we're just going out there on the highways and hedges is really a simple thing. It's just that if you don't want to do those things, you're rebellious. So in the sense of the spirit of what's taking place when you come across these camps or these videos, this is what's happening in the spirit. This is in Ezekiel 9:4. Salakia. Ezekiel 9:4, it says, And the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai said unto him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. Because that's one of the characteristics that the elect that are going to hold on to this truth and endure unto the end are going to have. They're going to sigh and cry for the abominations that are done down here. We're giving Yahushua no rest until he establishes the kingdom, until he returns and makes Jerusalem a praise on the earth. If you're not about those things, we're piping this tune, this very lovely song, and you're not dancing to it, well, then you're rebellious. You don't want to get with the program, basically. But in the sense, though, as we're preaching and prophesying, there's angels encamping around about us. And the angels are seeing how you deal with this truth. So I'm going to read from verse 4 again. And the Lord Yahweh Hashem Yahushai said unto him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. And in the Hebrew, that word mark is the wa, which basically means a seal for exemption. Because as these angels are seeing these people come across this truth, they're discerning our spirits and our minds and the intent of what we're going to do with it. This should really galvanize you to want to learn more and join this ministry so that you can also be saved. We are persuading you through the Spirit, in a sense. We're not going to force you at gunpoint to believe in what we believe in. We're just letting the Spirit discern. So this mark is something that the elect are going to have, that mark of exemption. Because as we're in the midst of a rebellious house, what are these other people doing compared to us? Continuing on, verse 5, And to the others he said in mine hearing, Go ye after him through the city and smite. Let not your eye spare, neither have ye pity. And so basically the Heavenly Father is creating these spirits in animals and judgments, car crashes, suicidal things, because that's literally the plague sent by the Heavenly Father. He's in charge of all these things. And if you're a rebellious person, those things will befall upon you because you rejected this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding and hated this grace period. So if you don't have that mark of the law, that exemption, because you're not sighing and crying for the abominations that are happening down here, then these angels are going to put a mark of a target on you. So from verse 5 again, it says, And to the others, the rebellious house, he said in mine hearing, Go ye after him through the city and smite. Let not your eye spare, neither have ye pity. And this is something that we've kind of noticed as we've been in this ministry for a while. People that come up against us, they get judged pretty quick, especially when we send out those curses. When it's like a really rebellious person, we have to stop what we're doing so that we can ask Yahweh Hashem Yahushai to send plagues on that person. And more times that thing happens instantly. Like brothers, I already have stories. I know in various other camps too, there's even more stories of judgment preceding these people who are disregarding this grace period. But like this is literally taking place. Angels are not sparing. They're not going to have pity on these people who disregard his message. So in verse 6 it says, Slay utterly old and young. Doesn't matter if there's a kid or an old person, a grown adult, you can't tell them anything. or a young ass kid, you can't tell him anything. Well, Elisha, he sent she-bears to slay a bunch of kids. So imagine when we actually have the power so that we can actually defend ourselves through the Spirit. And we're doing already with the angels encamping around about us. But just imagine, because when the Spirit is uplifted with us and the brothers have these abilities, like walking on water and healing, people are going to be afraid of us. So in verse 7, I'm going to continue on in verse 6. Slay utterly old and young, both maids and little children. So it ain't just men or women, because the Heavenly Father, he's not a, I forget how the word is, but he's not a person who regards a person for their status. He's going to judge people who are famous, women even, children even. Doesn't matter. If they reject this knowledge, they're fit for the slaughter. So verse 6, it says, Slay utterly old and young, both maids and little children and women, but come not near any man upon whom is the mark, that the law. And continuing on, it says, And begin at my sanctuary. Then they began at the ancient men which were before the house. So this is literally what's taking place. Like through the Spirit, angels are seen whether you hear or whether you forbear. Now I wanted to read this also, the parable of the sower, because this also is like taking place. The Heavenly Father is likening this into a very lovely movie, basically. And it's got a lot of similitudes and characteristics of certain things. We're fishers of men. We're people who plow in the fields. We're men who are healing with these words. But really, these parables are only for those who have discernment. So just going to read the first part in Matthew 13. And I'm going to read, let me see, I'll just start at verse 3. It says, "And he spake many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow." So Yahushua was preaching unto people. Not everybody understood what he was saying. It was basically like he was out there just reading poetry, in a sense. But it was for those who had ears to hear. Verse 4, it says, "And when he sowed, some seed fell by the wayside, and the fowls came up and devoured them." So as we're preaching on the highways and hedges, sometimes when we're out there sowing, the birds are going to come and pick those seeds. So it's not we're not going to be able to plant every seed. There's birds that are going to be out there that can eat seeds. In the same sense of how when we're sealing the elect and calling them forth for salvation, birds are going to basically pluck them out because they ultimately weren't numbered from the beginning. Verse 5, it says, "Some fell upon stony places where they had much earth, and forthwith they sprung up because they had no deepness of earth." So some people were probably going to come into this ministry for a little bit. They learned a little Hebrew, hold a Passover a few times, but ultimately, as it continues on, verse 9, "And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away." So in the sense of if the seed landed on stony ground, they did grow, but they did not endure. And like I said, we've already seen those accounts, and other brothers can attest to that. And it ain't going to stop until Yahushua returns. Continuing on, verse 6, verse 7, it says, "And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them." Like they really didn't just have a chance. "But others fell into good ground and brought forth fruit, some an hundredfold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold." Because not every brother is going to have all those talents, because this goes into that other parable of the gold and the napkin that the person put it under. But some, when they went to the markets, they flipped that money. Some tenfold, some flipped it fivefold. But nonetheless, they were blessed for the fact of what they did, as opposed to those who didn't flip that money and did nothing with it. They just put it under a napkin. But just to point out, though, is that like the Heavenly Father, He's going to choke some of these people. He's going to send the fowls to eat those seeds. But nonetheless, the ones who do spring forth are going to bring forth fruit. Some hundredfold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. And in verse 9 it says, "Who hath ears to hear, let him hear." Because this message really is only for those who are going to endure, who are going to grow, and like a corn is sieved, and actually like have a bountiful harvest. So we're only worried about the elect. We're not going to pray for those who hate us. We're not going to pray for those who aren't going to do anything for this ministry. We're only worried about those who are going to be to our left and our right, our brothers and sisters through the Spirit. And so in the sense of enduring, I want to read these last precepts. This is Matthew 24:13. "But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved." Because through much tribulation, we're going to enter into the kingdom of the heaven of the Most High when it's established here. We still have to go through all these trials and tribulations. Esau's still running the world. He's not on the islands anymore, but I'm pretty sure there's other islands and bunkers and stuff that he's just continuing doing his wicked devices. The heart of him is cruel, and he's just going to constantly do that because his spirit is not upright. So until he's put out the picture, this ain't it. This ain't our kingdom. So we still have to endure through all of this wicked stuff that's taking place. But those that are going to endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Because that's what we hope for. Salvation from this place. And last precept, I want to read this in Sirach, also known as Ecclesiasticus, chapter 2, verse 1. Because when you come across this truth and you're really about this, you really need to take hold of what is said in this chapter right here. It's basically like you're signing a document, and that you're required to do these things, or at least that you read them so that you expect these things when you actually come into this ministry. So in the book of Sirach 2:1, "My son, if thou come to serve the Lord, prepare thy soul for temptation. Set thy heart aright, and constantly endure, and make not haste in the time of trouble." So you got to set your mind aright. Basically, have this single in your mind. Yahweh Bashim Yahushai singled so that this right here, first and foremost, is what you do. You take care of business later. Well, this is the business. Everything else will be added unto you if you do what Yahweh Bashim Yahushai commands you to do. You can look at the generations of old and all the other accounts in the scriptures of how the men of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai stood still before his name, and the Lord fought for them. So continuing on, verse 3, it says, cleave unto him, and depart not away. And just to emphasize that, because like I said, man, we've encountered people who quit. But it says right here in the document that we're reading, the NDA or whatever, you're not supposed to quit. This is for life. So verse 3, it says, cleave unto him, and depart not away, that thou mayest be increased in thy last end. And that increase comes with salvation. That's the increase that we're focused on. Verse 4, whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully, and be patient when thou art changed to a low estate. Because part of this, you will be put in a low estate. You're going to go through what Job went through. But part of the document that you're reading here says that you have to be cheerful when you're going through those things. In verse 5, it says, for gold is tried in the fire, and the acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. So another similitude, we're likened unto gold ore or silver ore, and we're put in the furnace. And as you, if you ever see like a person smelting ore, it takes a lot of heat to purify the gold that comes out of it. And that's what the Heavenly Father is doing to the Lord's men. So it's really a purging process. This, like all the chastisements and things, and that you have to be cheerful while you're going through them. You're being chastised and purified so that you become a better person. So verse 5, it says, for gold is tried in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. Verse 6, believe in him, and he will help thee. Order thy way aright, and trust in him. And that's really like the key to, if you like are going through whatever situation in, believe in Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. Whatever burden you're dealing with, put it on him. Ask him for prayers. Like if you're not praying, well, then no wonder you're in whatever situation you're in. And I can continue reading into the chapter, but that's kind of like the point I wanted to get to, because this whole thing of ours is about enduring. And it's only about the elect, because some are going to come into this ministry. They're like in the parable of the sower, they're going to land on rocky, stony dirt. They're going to grow for a bit, but their roots aren't going to reach down to the soil, meaning that they're not going to last. And the roots basically like the feet of a plant. And if they don't have foundation, well, then they're not going to endure. And Yahushai is our foundation. He's the chief cornerstone, wherewith the third temple is being built. But with that, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Ruach HaKodesh, and Shalom Akim.